Hey everyone, this is Karnak with Star Wars Armada Explained. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to be looking at an Imperial officer, the Grand Inquisitor. The Grand Inquisitor is a character from the Star Wars Rebels show. The Grand Inquisitor is an Imperial officer. He's faction specific for the Empire, which you can see there next to his point cost, which is 4. How do you equip the officer slot? Bottom left hand corner of the card shows the officer icon. The Grand Inquisitor is unique. If you look there in front of his name, you'll see a dot or bullet point. Signifies that you can only bring one of him in your fleet. His card reads, when an enemy ship at distance 1 to 5 changes its speed, you may exhaust this card to increase or decrease your speed by 1. He does have a clarification. It reads, this card's effect resolves when the value on an enemy ship's speed dial is changed. So, Grand Inquisitor is very straightforward. In terms of a flowchart, did your enemy speed dial change? Yes or no? If yes, you can use Grand Inquisitor. If no, you cannot use Grand Inquisitor. So his activation timing is essentially, does your opponent physically change his speed on his speed dial? What's the timing again for all that? Well, when an opponent is making his determined course step, if he's going to change speed at all, either through navigation command or via some other method, if he physically changes the dial on his speed dial, when he locks in his maneuver tool, when he's done finishing to determine his course step, is actually executing his maneuver, that is when the Grand Inquisitor triggers, because your opponent has committed to changing his speed physically, and now has then also locked in his ship to conduct the maneuver. That is when the Grand Inquisitor can then say, okay, I'm going to use his ability and change my ship speed by 1. You can either increase it or decrease it. Again, though, you need to check to make sure you're in range of the ship that is doing that speed change. How do you do that? Well, if you bring up your distance band, which is pretty much just, it's the full length of the ruler. Remember, this is distance 1. The black, red is 2, 3 is orange, 4 is this peach color, and 5 is yellow. Now, when you're doing the distance check, it's not an attack, so it's not ranging from cardboard to cardboard. You're actually ranging from plastic bit to plastic bit. Like in this situation here, you see that I am ranging from the plastic base of my ship, not counting the shield dials or shield frames. I'm not ranging from the black cardboard, just the physical plastic portion of the ship itself. And you'll look on there and you'll see that I'm just barely nicking the plastic base of the Star Destroyer, okay? So that is the upgrade card check for that. Let me put this ship back where I had it before. Perfect. So that is the check. So in this situation, we'll say that this Star Destroyer, he's got our poor little Raider. Even though he had our Raider double arc, somehow our Raider is still alive. Somehow all of his shields are gone. We'll just say that. But the Star Destroyer is wanting to try to slow down and keep this Raider in front. We'll say the Raider hasn't activated yet. So the Star Destroyer, he spends a navigation command, and he drops a speed 1, and he places down his maneuver tool. We'll say he's executing a double click there. So then he turns his ship, and he's committed. He's locked in. He made that maneuver. So when he executes a maneuver, you can then say, okay, I'm now triggering the Grand Inquisitor, which, by the way, it's not exhausted for Grand Inquisitor. It means that depending on how many ships are in range, you can trigger this card multiple times. But in this instance, we're going to say, you know what? We're going to trigger this Raider to go from speed 3 to drop to speed 2. Now, why is that? Well, for a Raider, at speed 1 and speed 2, he gets double clicks on all of his movements without needing a navigation command. Very powerful. In the situation now, then when this Raider activates, since he did that speed change, he didn't have to use a navigation command for that. Maybe he had some other command dialed up. He then can use, for example, now a double click on 2 to escape that Star Destroyer's front arc, and now you've got that Star Destroyer double arced. See here? Firmly in the side arc, nice and safe. Him, you've got double arced into his side. Perfect positioning for a Raider. Now, what would have happened if you hadn't had the Grand Inquisitor, for example? Let's say that you had to have been stuck at speed 3, and you didn't have a navigation command. Well, about the best you could do is something like this, which obviously still gets you out of the front arc, but not necessarily giving you the positioning that you want with your raider in this instance. Well, I mean, shooting at the rear, I guess that's still fine, but now you're completely disengaging from that Star Destroyer. Or if he's first player, he's just getting, completely moving away from you. So, I mean, there's definitely situations where you want that speed control. And typically where I find this card the most useful is on ships like Raiders or Arcadans. I guess there are some other nuanced situations where he could be useful on some other ships, but that's not typically where I find him useful. And again, with all of the Imperial ships, the officer slot is just so highly contested. And for the most part, you're typically queuing up navigation commands anyway, so it just hasn't found quite a lot of use yet. Now, what are some other things that can trigger this as well? Let's start with Phylons. So Phylons, remember with that card that I've gone over already in one of my other videos, pretty much is that when it triggers, if your opponent has either if he has a navigation token, Phylons rips that off of there. There is no question about that. It will take the token if there's a token, for a navigation token specifically. If there is no navigation token, then that ship must reduce its speed by 1 to a minimum of 1. Now, in this situation, since you are causing that opponent to physically change his speed dial, if he's going faster than 1, that will trigger Grand Inquisitor. Okay, so that does trigger that. Now, if his speed already is 1, obviously you can't reduce it any further in 1, and so there is no speed change happening. That won't trigger him. Another card is Admiral Constantine. Admiral Constantine, during the status phase, where, as long as he's got his appropriate ships in range, he can change enemy ship speed dials to force them to increase or decrease their speed by 1 to a minimum of 1. So again, if they're already going speed 1, he could increase their speed, which would trigger Grand Inquisitor, or if they're going faster than that, he can decrease their speed again, can trigger Grand Inquisitor. That's totally allowed. As far as I'm aware, there's no other crazy nuances or instances or anything else going on. That's pretty much it for the guy. But of course, if you feel like I got anything wrong or if I'm missing something, please be sure to point it out. Let me know. I always respond to my comments. Always more than happy to talk out how we came to these conclusions. I do appreciate you guys joining me, and hey, I'll catch you all next time.